Hello mathematicians, hope in this video and getting a little bit of practice you can say I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square. We're going to look at two different examples in this video. Completing the square is something that is a little bit tricky and a little bit, it's not super intuitive, but if you just are able to follow the steps and kind of follow what's going along, it's really a fairly straightforward process. So let's look at our first example here. So we're given the equation x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. And when we are completing the square, it goes along the thought that we want to apply the square root property to solve these quadratic equations. But not every quadratic equation has a perfect square that we can just see right away. However, we can rewrite the quadratic equation so that it is a perfect square. And that process is called completing the square. So we're going to solve this quadratic equation by completing the square. So we want our quadratic equation in the form of x squared plus bx equals c. So in this problem, we can see the expression on the left side of this equation is written in the form of x squared plus bx plus c, and that equals 0. So in order to get it in this form, we want to add 15 to both sides. So we're going to add 15 to both sides of the equation, which would give us x squared plus 2x equals 15. And one quick thing to notice that the a in this problem is equal to 1. If the a is not equal to 1, we would need to divide the whole equation by a. So now that we have it in the form of x squared plus bx equals c, our first step is to calculate the value of b over 2. So we need to calculate the value of b over 2. Well, b over 2, our b in this case is 2, so 2 over 2 equals 1. So our b over 2 is equal to 1 in this problem right here. And our second step is going to be to square that value. So 1 squared equals 1 still. So this problem is pretty straightforward just because it was equal to 1, but 1 squared equals 1. And our third step is going to be to add that number to both sides of the equation. I'm going to emphasize both sides. It is important that you add it to both sides of the equation. So now we're going to add 1 to both sides of this equation. So we add 1 over here, and we add 1 on the right side as well. So if we were to write this in standard form, well, that would give us x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 15 plus 1 gives us 16. And now we're ready for the fourth step, which is to use factoring and the square root property to find the solutions. And we can see that this is a perfect square trinomial. Both the first and last term have perfect squares, and when they are double and the product of those two perfect squares are doubled, that equals this middle term. So this is a perfect square trinomial. So this is equal to x plus 1, that whole quantity squared. That equals 16. And now we can take the square root of both sides of this equation, so that would give us x plus 1 equals square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. So that would give us x plus 1 equals 4, or x plus 1 equals negative 4. And let's solve for this one over here. So we subtract 1 from both sides, which will give us x is equal to 3, or, and we subtract 1 again, and we get x is equal to negative 5. So our solutions would be x is equal to 3, comma, negative 5. And those would be our solutions to this quadratic equation. Let's look at one more example here. So we're given x squared minus 20x plus 93 equals 0. And we're going to complete the square to solve for this quadratic equation. And we want our quadratic equation in the form of x squared plus bx equals c. So we're going to subtract 93 from both sides of the equation, which gives us x squared minus 20x equals negative 93. So now we're ready for step 1. Calculate the value of b over 2. Well, our b is equal to negative 20. So we get negative 20 over 2. And that is equal to negative 20 divided by 2. That is negative 10. All right, now it says square that value. So negative 10 squared is equal to 100. Negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100. Now we need to add that to both sides of the equation. So we add 100 and we add 100. So that would give us x squared minus 20x plus 100. I wrote that in standard form equals a negative 93 plus 100. That is going to give us a positive 7. And now we have this expression on the left side is a perfect square trinomial. And we know that this is equal to x minus 10, that value squared, equals 7. Now we take the square root of both sides. So that gives us x minus 10 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. And this is an irrational number, so we'll leave it in radical form right here. So that would give us x minus 10 equals the negative square root of 7, or x minus 10 equals the positive square root of 7. In either case, we would add 10 to both sides, which would give us x is equal to 10 minus square root of 7, or we'd add 10 again. X is equal to 10 plus the square root of 7, and that would be our final solution. So that is it for a video on completing the square. Hope after watching this and getting a little bit of practice, you can say, I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square.